their original being in the 1980s. And Dave Irvine and I, Dave is who's going to be speaking to you as a partner in this consulting business that I have, and no longer does that because he's kind of busy doing other things right now. But we actually provided a seminar in Washington, D.C. when PACs first came out, explaining exactly what they are. I ran always without PAC money, without any company giving me money. My neighbors, my friends, those were the people who put me in the legislature, and those are the people I represented. And I felt very close to them because they did that for me. Now there are, let's see, there are 50, if I remember this correctly, there are 50 lobbyists who represent deep pocket corporations or multiple clients. In fact, one of the multiple clients was representing two companies that were, a health company and a tobacco company, and there was a bit of a conflict there, so they had to choose between the two. The cigarette people must pay the most because that's the group they went with. At any rate, you might be interested to know that, and maybe some of you read in the Trib not too long ago, about some of the special kinds of legislative things that happen. In my time, we had a governor's ball, and it was for the people. And in order to go, some people paid as little as $10. It was, everybody came, and there were 2 or 3 different rooms that housed us because everybody in the state knew it was the governor's ball and it was for everyone. Not so anymore. Now it costs $10,000 a table, and you can even pay more if you want to. Dave has arrived, so I'll go very quickly through some of these things that I think are important. I think it is, in fact, we'll give him the time right away. I'll answer any questions you have. I can tell you that legislators can get by without having special interest groups come to them and expect more than you can give to your own people in your own constituency. And that's what I want to see again, is that kind of a legislator, a people's legislature. And this kind of thing, it's too bad that we have to do this, because legislators ought to do it. But we're going to work very hard to make sure this is successful. Thank you.
Thanks, Georgia.
Thank you.
Okay. Most of the hearings we're holding around the state start at 7 o'clock, and there were 2 exceptions. This is one of them, so I think, excuse David for my lack of communication to him to...
So he's 30 minutes early.
Yeah, in that case. So if you don't mind waiting another half hour, we'll get started. And so let me introduce David Irvine, who is one of the executive committee members with me and drafters of the initiative. And we're going to go, let's quickly cue this up, and I'm just going to turn the time over to him. And then after David, we'll open it up for some questions and answers, okay?
Well, I'm thoroughly embarrassed at being late. I thought I was early. But, let me just quickly describe what our initiative does. Pardon me. And by way of preface, let me just say initially that a pretty talented group of lawyers spent a lot of time working on this. And we did not take the responsibility lightly. We did not take the task lightly. And particularly, we did not want to end up with a product after all of our work and all of the work to be done by those who will gather signatures to put this initiative on the ballot, only to have it reviewed by a court and be found unconstitutional. So we have tried to be as careful as we could with respect to issues of constitutionality and we're satisfied that we have a product that will withstand at least any constitutional challenge that we were able to anticipate. So our initiative does three things. First of all, it establishes a 5-member, we say independent commission, but that may be a little bit misleading. What we're really suggesting is that it is not independent of the legislature. We are treating it as a legislative creation. And I can talk a little bit more about that shortly, but we have tried to draft it and structure it so that it is as politically neutral as possible. And we provide a process which may not be the most efficient in the world. There may be other ways to structure a commission to accomplish what we tried to accomplish. But we felt this was a reasonable approach and that it took advantage of a principle of randomness and also a principle of compromise, because we require the 4 legislative leaders, the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, the Minority Leader of the Senate, and the Minority Leader of the House, to unanimously agree upon a list of 20 candidates. And we have provided in the initiative that these persons who may serve as members of this Ethics Commission have to meet certain criteria. They cannot have been a lobbyist for 5 years. They cannot have been an elected office holder for 5 years. They cannot have been a political party officer except for a voting precinct chairman or vice chair or delegate for the previous 5 years. The 4 legislative leaders are requested to make a unanimous or come to a unanimous agreement about a list of 20 such individuals. And then those 20 names are, and this is, we think, the most unique feature of the proposal. We couldn't find it anywhere else in the country. It sounds a little bit strange, but the principle is, we think, important. The names are put into a hat, and then on some basis that is ensured to be random and transparent, because all of this has to be done in a public setting and in an open public meeting. Someone is going to draw 5 names from that hat, and the first 5 names drawn become the commissioners of this commission. They serve 5 years. The terms are staggered so that we hopefully can provide for some institutional continuity in this process, and they have the authority then to appoint a full-time executive director who, by our bill, must be a member of the Utah Bar and such other staff as may be necessary to allow them to accomplish the task which we have outlined. The commissioners are not a full-time commission. They would serve as necessary. This would essentially be volunteer service, although they would be paid a per diem for travel and expenses. The second thing that our initiative does is establish a code of conduct. And this code of conduct has been generated through the application of a couple of principles. One is that the relationship between legislators and the voters whom they serve should be in the nature of what lawyers call a fiduciary relationship. That simply means that it's the highest standard of trust that is placed in any person who is acting in behalf of another. It's a standard of trust that is employed with respect to corporate officers and directors, with respect to lawyers and their clients, with respect to physicians and their patients, with respect to accountants and their clients, with respect to trustees and the beneficiaries of that trust. We didn't make this up. That fiduciary standard has been held to apply to all governmental officers by courts all across the country. But we think it's appropriate to revitalize that standard within the state of Utah. And so the Code of Conduct is intended to satisfy, to the extent we feel we reasonably and constitutionally can, an effort to ensure